Thank you for joining me once again on my Theatric Dyspraxic podcast with your host, Be Random. Here with our second part in my interview with Billy Stanley, the founder and host of the organization and podcast Dyspraxia Help for You. Our conversation lasted quite a while, so I decided to split it up into different parts. Here we talk about our struggles and experiences in school, with he in the UK and I in the US. And we also talk a bit about sports, as well as a frank discussion on politics. I hope you enjoy this part of our interview, and stay tuned for more. So you were about 4 years old, and I'm assuming there were a few years, I guess, before you really were aware of your dyspraxia, at least. What was it like for you whenever you started going to school and those early years in your education? What was school like for you?
Well, I it's a weird one because now I know I'm dyslexic as well. I had help at school, but I was never told why because my mum never really sat down and said you've got this thing called dyspraxia. I don't think she really knew what it was herself because it's not really ever been a thing that people have ever spoken about really
Even
until
now, especially
now.
then, even now, it's hard to find.
Yeah, but basically, I don't think she knew what it was. I think she just thought it was a development issue, and I'd grow out of it because that's probably what she was told. Because obviously they didn't know much about it, although
Yeah,
people were
that was
saying,
sort of the mindset at the time.
yeah, yeah. Basically, it had just come out of being called clumsy child syndrome, and I think doctors would have still probably called it that back then, but on paper they would have named it different. So that's the mindset of the 90s, really. And basically, I throughout my early schooling, I would have had like a learning assistant sat with me and a group of other people. But because it was like a mainstream proper like education um, school, um, it would be like extra help just to keep you updated, like keep you in line with the other students. And it was never like said, oh well, you've got dyslexia or dyspraxia. It's just like I was finding it slow to write off the whiteboard or blackboard as it was back then. I was finding it hard to keep writing lines. I struggled with the maths really badly. I still do. I didn't really learn the time until I was about 11. I struggled to learn the time until I was about 11. Um, so yeah, I felt like I didn't really know what I had dyspraxia. I knew I was clumsy, but I didn't know I had dyspraxia. I didn't know it was a disability really, more or less until I left school altogether when I looked into it, and then I educated my mum on it more than her educating me on it.
Right. Yeah, that tends to be how it goes.
Yeah, um, and basically I had help throughout all my schooling, but because nobody really knew what dyspraxia was, and they didn't have a clue that I was dyslexic at all, and had ADHD at this point as well, I think they didn't know what to do with me. They just sort of, you know, basically keeping me sat still, keeping me trying to keep me focused.
Yeah,
Uh,
try to keep you
but
in line.
but I found that I was excluded, not from school, but from classrooms because I wasn't able to keep up. Um, I was told often that I was hard to teach pupil. So I would end up going to a room called the exclusion zone where a lot of students that were unruly were sent. Um, so I lost out on a lot of that social interaction with other people because I'd be sat in what's basically like a not a cell, but like there was walls next to you where you couldn't see other people, you couldn't hear
Oh,
them.
like cute little cubicles and stuff.
Yeah, basically. And I felt I lost out on a lot of that interaction with other people. Um, didn't have the same things with friends because they was all having fun in the classroom and
Mhm.
having help from the teacher. I wasn't getting that. I was just told to read from book and answer some questions.
It
So I
almost
wasn't getting
sounds
that.
like some kind of detention or something.
That's basically what it was. The exclusion zone was basically like detention without excluding you from school altogether.
Hmm.
So to be told all the time, you're hard to teach. We don't know what's wrong with you, but we've been told there is something wrong with you. And I'm like sitting there going, well, can you tell me then, please? I don't have a clue what's wrong with
And
me, really.
is
So
this
I'm like,
is this where they usually put like the delinquents, like the troublemakers
yeah,
and stuff?
all the unruly, like I don't like to use the word disobedient. It sounds like talk to a dog, but
Yeah,
basically I feel like disobedient students that were not there to learn, but were there just to
the
mess
rebels.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, well, this ain't going to help me because I'm like, I want to learn, but I just can't. I want to learn, but I don't know how to learn. And I'm sitting there thinking, so what do I do? Do I struggle, or do I just fit in with the other kids that are in this room with me?
Do
Because
you
I feel
just
like,
resign yourself to it? It's such a shame that because you obviously didn't belong in there because that was meant for the troublemakers and stuff, and you weren't a troublemaker, you were just struggling.
yeah, and basically my school's mindset was straight away from the first year at secondary school, which was like what you call when you leave when you go into like middle school, basically.
Hmm.
And um, I, I was just dropped in bottom sets for every lesson, so I was in like the bottom ranked class for every subject. You'd have it in like A, B, C, and D, and A be in the top class, D be in the bottom class, and
Right.
it was either because they didn't want to put the helping assistants in the top class because it'd be pointless, or because they felt I needed to be in the bottom set because I was thick. I just never knew why they had teaching assistants always in the bottom set, because I felt like if you was in top A, there would always be someone struggling regardless of their intellect. Um, but basically, I was dropped in bottom sets without on no merit. But, it wasn't based on my work, on my intellect, and I know that for a fact because when I had my adult dyspraxia assessment done in 2017, they told me that my IQ was relatively high, um, which made me think the school basically dropped me in bottom sets for everything, purely for monetary reasons, and because they couldn't teach me.
They just
Um,
didn't understand how to approach your situation. It wasn't any lack of intellect or anything
yeah,
like that. It was just no, they didn't know how to properly instruct you because they didn't understand what was going on. And this is a big problem with when it comes to having dyspraxia, is the fact that a lot of dyspraxics they're perfectly intelligent. We just don't, as a society, whether you're American or from the UK or anywhere, because we don't understand enough about it and there's not enough public awareness. Uh, they don't know how to teach kids, and they don't know how to accommodate like they do for other,
no, no.
disorders.
I think like as I said, when you get chucked into the disobedient exclusion zone, you sort of fall to you sort of become the class clown. You end up, you know, you blend into your surroundings, so then you become unruly yourself. And
Yeah,
and it's like when you get chucked into bottom sets without them even determining your intellect, you kind of like you get taught to a shoddy standard because you're in bottom set anyway. So you don't get to the best education. You just get taught the basics, and
you don't get to reach your potential. Yeah.
the teachers in the bottom set are not the best teachers anyway. So you're not getting the best education. So I found that I never really learned anything at school, but I've pretty much self-taught whatever I know now. I've self-taught based on YouTube videos. I love history now. I love geography. I love literature. It's all self-taught. If someone said to me, we'll privatise the school system, I'll be like, go for it because the state system just doesn't work. I'm sorry, in my opinion, it's
Well,
abysmal, especially
there's
for
no
hearing disability.
bigger there's no bigger educator today than the internet. And
Yeah,
I
I know.
think I would say that most of the things that people learn, the actual useful factual information that people learn, they
Yeah,
learn from the internet. Uh, it's their greatest resource. I mean, there's so much unlocked knowledge now because
yeah,
of the
yeah,
internet. It's almost like schools are obsolete in terms of actual education rather than just a place to drop kids off for the day, you know.
yeah. And I find that people go, well, you know, online is a lot of fake information, but I've discovered that a lot of the stuff I was taught in history at school was false. So it makes no odds if you learn it yourself. We get taught by a person. Like you said, it's a glorified nursery creche, in my opinion.
And
Yeah,
a lot of teachers tend to be older, so they don't really know how to use the internet quite as efficiently as maybe and people in the younger set. And I knew a teacher when I was a junior in high school. I was about 17, and she said, "Oh, you know that you only use 10% of your brain," and it was It was like I knew since I was probably 14 that that was not true, that that is just a myth, and that you no, you don't just use 10% of your brain. It's nonsense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's like how they give you, well, in my school, they gave you like an hour for lunch. Well, when you grow up, you go to work, you don't necessarily get an hour for lunch. You don't need an hour for lunch, you just need to eat food and have a bit of a stroll, really. It's more like padding out the day, really. It feels like they just wanted to keep you somewhere for the day, and they have no real intention of teaching you. They just want to, make it seem like you've got somewhere to go for a reason. But
The
like, right,
babysitting the youth, pretty much.
well, I think lockdown has proven that parents do a far better job of teaching kids than most teachers, if I'm being honest. And I know a lot of teachers that will hear this will say a bit harsh, but as a dyspraxic, I find that I don't have a filter, and I'll just say it as it is.
Yeah.
Uh, I find that there's a lot of brilliant like special needs teachers out there, but a lot of the mainstream teachers couldn't give a toss. And yeah, I feel like they don't want to be there as much as we don't want to be at school. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's like if you said to a student now, a kid now, play on your tablet or watch a video on YouTube, they'd love it. You tell them to go sit in a boring history lesson at school, they'll be bored witless.
Well, as a child of two teachers, actually more than that, because my grandparents were teachers,
Yeah.
and I have aunts and uncles who are teachers. So I've seen just how stressful it is to be a teacher.
Of
So
course, yeah.
I understand that aspect of it. I think school is useful in terms of social development. Um, but there's definitely things I don't know. There's just that all comes into society in the way that people's opinions and the way that they uh, understand how to treat others. Um, the issues that come with, like bullying and things like that, just come from people not understanding. So I think it would be useful if school was used to teach stuff like compassion and just understanding sort of ethics and things like that. And of course, teaching vital information because sometimes, there's a lot you can learn from the internet, but usually you have to seek it out. And if school's going to teach you something, I think they should teach you the stuff that is relevant to you, not just you at that age, but when you get older.
Yeah, and I find that when you go into that kind of profession as a teacher, or be it anything that helps people, like nursing or being a doctor, etc., you would anticipate the fact that it'll be stressful and not fun at the best of times. But you're there primarily because you're there because you want to do it and because you want to help people, or you want to educate them, you want to nurse them, whatever. Um, and I feel like it's their duty then to make it entertaining, or make if there's been a teacher, make it entertaining, or if they're a nurse, to make it as pleasant as possible. I feel like you kind of have to anticipate the fact that it's stress. These jobs are stressful, but you've got to understand that people that are going there don't want to be there most of the time. So you've got to make it, fun in the same way that you go to watch YouTube because it's educational, but it's not regimented. It's fun. It's on your own terms.
Yeah, you just gotta pre-watch stuff before, because that's how my dad got in trouble. He showed a video without realizing, well, and it wasn't really that bad, but it was considered inappropriate. But I'm not gonna get into that story. But
I think I've heard this actually before. I think you've told me. Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I
I
think
think
it.
I probably did in one of our Dyspraxic Circle
Yeah.
conversations.
I think that's safe for an X-rated video, Brandon. It's a good story,
I don't know
but
if it's considered X-rated, maybe PG. Maybe when I don't know, maybe when you have more time. But it's
yeah,
my dad was always really good at making teaching fun though, and being a musician really helped him because he
yeah,
could bring a guitar to class and he could sing a song, and he used his sense of humor. I really wish I could have been in his class for a year when I was in fourth. I don't think I wanted to when I was at that age because you don't want to be, you don't want to have your parent as a teacher. But looking back on it, I so wish that my dad was my teacher back in fourth grade because that would have been
I
great.
bet, I bet, yeah.
Um, so what kind of grades did you make when you were? How did you do academically
I,
in
I,
school?
I can't really remember. Not, I would say not great. I wasn't really happy. I wasn't expecting much better than that. It's hard to really tell you what they stand in comparison to what you get over in America. But I would say what I got was quite shoddy, but not unexpected. Went to college reluctantly because I didn't know what else to do. Did a subject with IT software. Don't know why, because I don't really like that kind of thing. But I'm not really good at it now, to be fair. But I managed to get really good grades. But yeah, I think like I said, I've self-taught myself, and I've never once been asked what grades I've got in a job interview. No one's ever said, "What did you get at, high school or college?" I could just make it all up. To be fair, I could just say I've got A's and everything.
Yeah.
And no one batted an eyelid. I think a lot of people that went to university as well have said, like, in comments to me, "Yeah, we've never been asked. Like, we might as well not got in 50 grand's worth of debt." It's like they might as well not bothered because you could just make it up and no one would even look.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
It's like, what's the point? It's like, you might as well just stay at home, watch YouTube, give yourself a grade, go to work. Basically, that's my interpretation. I could be totally wrong, but I've never once been asked. My girlfriend's never been asked for her grades either.
No, they don't ever ask. Nobody cares about that. It's more about, I think they care more about sort of your extracurriculars in some jobs. I've been asked that, like, what kind of school clubs were you involved in when you were?
Well, that's it. I've been asked more about what soccer team do I support and what music festival do I go to, rather than, oh, what did you get in English at school, or what did you go to school? None of that. All that's out the window. That's all irrelevant. It's more about what hobbies you got and what passions you did at school. Like, what side projects at school did you do? Did you sing in the choir, or no one cares what you did in maths. It's so you get told at school. That's another lie you get told at school as well. You got to study hard because it will be used against you when you leave school. No, it doesn't.
No, not really. It's all about entrance exams and assessments that might factor into it. But other than that, it doesn't matter what you've got on your English test in 10th grade or something. It doesn't. None of that matters in the end. I mean, in the Western society, of course, you have to pass at least a little bit so that you can go on to the next grade.
Yeah, but what they neglect to tell you over here is you can go on to do like night schools or extra, like you can spend summer doing like lessons, pay for it yourself, or you can get help to pay for it.
Over here, if you fail, you basically have to go to summer school, and if you fail that, then you get held back a grade.
Well, that's what I mean. Though, like, if you really want to pass, you'll find a way of passing. Like, you'll spend that summer doing it, or you'll go back a year. Here, it's not kind of the same. Kind of, you just get let go. Like, if you fail, you fail. You've got to start your own life.
So they just kind of move you up anyway. They kind of advance you along, even if you fail a grade.
Yeah, basically, it's like if you leave school with rubbish grades, it's like tough luck. Getting the grades is probably the worst day of your life. Really, it's like being dumped a million times over, because if you're anticipating bad results, you've got to stand there while it's a bit like Valentine's Day. Basically, it's the worst form of Valentine's Day. Is getting your results day, right? I don't know how.
The academic Valentine's Day.
Yeah, basically, you're standing there with a bit of paper. I had to be woken up by my friends to go to school to get these grades that day, and I wasn't going to go because I knew it was going to be rubbish. And I literally just reluctantly went because they banged the door down to say, "Bill, come on." Anyway, I got it. It wasn't what I expected, but you're surrounded by people that that have fortunately not been neurodivergent, they're neurotypical, and they've got their brilliant grades, that they've been in top set, they've never been discouraged, they've been invited to do other stuff, and they have had like moral support rather than extra support, I'd say, and they get the grades they want. But you're surrounded by that. It's a bit like Valentine's Day. You go out for a meal when you're single and everyone else is in a couple, and that's how it feels when you get your results. You're one of the few that got really bad results. And it's worth noting. I'm not saying I don't want to be like Rosemary, but it's like I felt like in my year at least, because I was the awkward one, I was the slow one, etc. And everyone else in my year got offered, like, before you left school, you got given a an induction to go work at work somewhere to like work experience before you left school, to give you that bit of prep before you find a job. I was the only one that wasn't invited to do that, and also when it came to like basically you have a choice of leaving school to go to college, or a thing called sixth form for a year, which is like an extension to your school year. It's like an adult version of school. So you don't have to go to school in a uniform; you go in your casual clothes instead. And I wasn't invited for that either. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a misbehaved child or student. I just wasn't very good at learning at that point, or wasn't getting the help I needed. So that was a big blow. I felt like that was a big rejection. So by the time I got my rubbish grades, I wasn't even bothered. I just felt like, yeah, this is a rubbish day because everyone else is happy. But I wasn't expecting to go there anyway. So
Yeah, it's not like a huge disappointment. I mean, you kind of expect as much, but you're not looking forward to what you already come to expect, pretty much.
yeah, and a lot of the people that I went to school with that got good grades, they're probably in the same line of work as they're mostly in the same line of work as me. I'm probably in a higher role, so it's not. I'm not bothered by it. I just think education's not the all or end all in this country.
It really
I
isn't. Or in
think it's
our society. I mean, I can't speak for, it's
yeah,
different sort of on the other side of the pond in like the Asian countries. It's a whole nother story. But over here, the thing, I guess it's primarily an American thing. I don't know if other countries do the whole we will hold you back a grade. I've known people I've been to school with who I knew some people who, when I was in high school, there were people I went to elementary school who were still in elementary school when I was in high school.
is
Like,
that because is that because you in America, what age is it that you can start applying for what we call benefits, like job seekers? What age is it you start being able to be eligible for that?
like the age that you become eligible to get a job.
No, say unemployment benefit, I think you call it over there, to get an unemployment benefit. So when you haven't got a job, you get supported financially with unemployment benefit whilst you're out of work. What age is the limit? What age is the eligibility for that starts?
I really don't know. I think it depends on if you're still a dependent on your parents or not.
Right. Okay. Because I'm thinking. I mean, I'm just speculating. But in America, is it you're held back in school year by a year because they don't want to throw you out onto the scrap heap to claim that kind of benefit? Because obviously, if you haven't got the right grades, you might not get the right job. You might not get a job, so you need to get a good enough grades. They basically want to make you do something rather than nothing. Whereas here, they throw you out of school with good grades or bad grades, and hope that you go to college or sixth form and university.
Yeah, I don't really know why. They just kind of they'll hold you back. A lot of people, I mean, if they get held back, it's usually because they just don't care, you know.
Yeah,
They don't put any effort. So they fail everything because they just don't care enough to study or to they don't even participate. Um, but they don't do because you only get kicked out of school if you know you only get kicked out of school if you do something bad, if you're a delinquent and you get like expelled or something. But if you're just a slacker and you
yeah.
don't care enough to about school, they'll just keep holding you back until you eventually drop out, drop out, which obviously, and again, I don't know the laws, but like if you're 18, and you're still in junior high, then you're probably gonna drop out. They're probably gonna be like, yeah, we can't, you're a fully grown adult, you can't keep coming to school with these kids. It's just not.
I mean, as like a dyspraxic, I mean, um, I can't imagine being dyspraxic in America and like having my education uh, like way I had it at school, and then throw that in, like change the country to America, and then be told to be thrown back a year, and then a year again because I wasn't getting the help, and I was told that I was hard to teach. That would blow my confidence for sure. That would be like, well, all my friends are pretty much ready to leave education altogether, and I'm still at school. It's like that would be for think I'd be shot to pieces. I think that would happen today.
Well, I think it's different if you have some sort of special education. Then I don't think they'll hold you. But I almost got held back after my second grade year, and then I was never threatened with getting held back or anything. I think they were more lenient because they didn't know I was dyspraxic, but they thought that I was on the autism spectrum. So I had a bit of a different kind of education plan. Um, so I think they were a bit more lenient on certain things. Like I had a math teacher that would just pass me, and I can guarantee you I did not pass that class, but I passed it, and I can only attribute that to her just being like, well, I'll just pass him. I'll give him a C. I'll give him a 70. I'll pass him just enough so that he passes.
So do you think that was a thing, like a sign of reluctance on their part to acknowledge that you had underlying hidden disability issues, or the fact that they didn't want to sort of hold you back for that reason? They didn't want to make it more work for themselves to investigate them problems, so they made it slightly better for you in that respect, passing you when you felt like you shouldn't have got the pass so easily, and that maths, for instance. Or do you feel like they were just unaware and just thought, we're partial because we feel sorry for you? How do you feel? Do you think they couldn't be bothered, or do you feel they were more sympathetic to you?
Well, in the case of my math teacher, because I had the same math teacher throughout high school, and it was a remedial math class, and most of the other students in the class were like, they were just lazy, just didn't care. And I was just kind of in there because I just struggled with math. And I think at first, in my freshman year, my first year of high school, she was a bit more like, oh, you need to try harder, oh, you need to, make up this test or something. But then I think after a while, she was like, well, he's not, there's something wrong with him, I think I'm just, and he's not a troublemaker, he doesn't disrupt my class or anything. So I'll just, and I think part of it too is the fact that she knew I was involved in theater. So I think she didn't want to be that teacher that, kept me from being able to do like the one act plays, the UIL uh
Yeah.
stuff, the extracurricular stuff because I was failing, And I think she knew that I was not going to get it. I was not going to pick it up the way that I needed to actually pass. So I think she just kind of resigned to just be like, I'll just let him. I'll just try to let him get through it, because he's not a problem for me. And I think she just wanted to be lenient.
I think that's in a way it's very supportive, and that's admirable. But it's like, it kind of like, if you did that in all your lessons, it would have been a bit more problematic, because then you'd be like, well, you wouldn't know whether or not you were, getting by, or whether or not you was actually up to scratch with certain subjects, or whether or not it's just like because they were reluctant to help you and they didn't want to make more of a fuss. They felt it was the best thing to do in the absence of the diagnosis. Or do you see what I mean? It's like
Yeah, it's kind of like they just like, it's sad in a way because you do feel like, oh, they're just giving up. They just gave up on you, so they're just gonna let you pass. But at that time, of course, it was just like, well, it is working out in my favor, so I'm not gonna be cross about it. But still, you do kind of feel like they're just kind of writing you off.
it's
And
like I would surmise that, obviously not to the same extent, but like a police officer, imagine a police officer end of his shift, rather than get you in handcuffs and say, right, you're coming with me. Basically, it's like him saying, well, it's 5 to 12. I finish in 5 minutes.
yeah, he only stole a Tootsie Roll.
Yeah, yeah. You might as well go. It's not worth the paperwork. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah, he didn't murder somebody. That's
Yeah,
kind of how it is. It's like he's not a delinquent like some of these other kids in my class. He just shows up. He's got his own stuff that he's good at. I think that's a big part of it too, is she just kind of in her mind, and I mean it's true, but she kind of thought math is just not his thing. He's got his thing, and it's not this. So I'm not gonna have it just get in the way of what he's actually good at and what he actually has an interest in.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
I feel like that could be like it could be, in a way, it's probably done you a favour because you've managed to carry on doing your acting. But it's like, you know, what if I know we've just this is quite, it goes against what I've just said like the last 10 minutes. But it's like if you'd got the grades in maths because you were good at maths, then you could have been a banker. Do you know what I mean? Like, had you known you was good at maths, generally good at maths, you might have gone on to do a job where you could be earning hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, um, rather than acting on the stage. Do you know what I mean? It's like you don't know if they're closing the door on your potential, um, and by helping you out in that kind of fashion, although it makes your life beneficial in other parts, you don't know whether or not it's closed the door on other things. In the same way that if you was in the school football team, and you got a pass because you was good at kicking the ball, uh, were you a good player? Could you have played quarterback? You don't know, do you? Until you know got passed on playing, passed on your performance as a quarterback. It's predetermining your. It's either predetermining your ability, or it's basically like saying, well, we haven't got the time or the efficiency to, fully get you through this. So, and we don't want to diagnose you, so we're just going to let you through. It's basically like what do you call it? Not a free pass, but it's like I think
it is
what do you
almost
call
like
it?
a free pass.
Yeah, what's it in American football when you get a free or like Monopoly rather? You know, you go to jail or you get a free pass. It's kind of like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't ask me about football terms because I'm not.
but I would hate to surprise you, Brandon, but American football isn't really my speciality. Soccer would be my.
Really. I am, as a Texan, I'm angry. No. No.
Yeah. I've only seen like 3 Super Bowls. I couldn't tell you who won, but I'd be like, I could sit here and try and flag some American football at you, but as a Texan, I'd be embarrassing you fans with all my
No,
knowledge.
yeah, I am not, I never really saw what the big deal was about football. The only thing I could say about it is I was, it was kind of baffling for me in school because of how much emphasis was put on football and the football team. And like for instance, we got like no budget for our theater. We, our auditorium was fine, but like they built like $1 million stadium for the football, football stadium at our high school, and they put so much focus on the football team, and they never won anything. They weren't like an all winning team. They rarely won a game. We always lost. It wasn't a very good football team, but they just spent so much money and attention on football.
It's like a vanity project rather than a attention to detail. They know they've got no real chance of succeeding, but they want to look
Yeah,
that they want to look like they're in a Versace dress rather than in a suit rather than
yeah, it's the image. They want to talk the talk, but they can't walk the walk.
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, they'd rather spend £1 million on a stadium that no one will really have any success in. But you know, they don't really want to, put money towards, getting people diagnosed, struggling like yourself in school, whilst
Yeah,
you're at school, and
well,
when that would have helped you, and you would have benefited to, probably benefit to the economy much more. I feel like had everyone of our generation been given more support within disabilities at school, we'd all go on to offer the economy much more in revenue back. So it's a small income to, small amount of pay to get that in place,
it
just before at the beginning. But that
yeah.
provision, I feel like there's a bigger gain by putting that provision in place rather than not letting that provision in, getting that provision in there.
It's odd for me to comment on that sort of thing. I mean, I totally agree with you. In my case, it's a bit different because I knew very early on where my interests lied and what I wanted to focus on. And everybody knew it. Everybody knew that I was interested in writing and creating storytelling and creating characters and then acting. Um, so I don't think anybody, especially myself, really thought of me excelling anywhere else. It wasn't like most people, they don't go through their life knowing exactly what they want and what they want to do or what they want to be or where their interests lie. They just are just trying to get through school, and you know they're just part of the populace. And so I know what you're saying when it comes, because you know you have to kind of figure out when you're going through school what you want to be, what you can be good at. You need those opportunities to kind of figure that stuff out, and it's hard when you're in have a system in place that doesn't allow you to figure those things out. Um, but it's different in my case, because I just always knew what I wanted to do, what my interests were. It was always clear and evident to me and to everyone else.
See, I found that um, I never really knew what I wanted to do when I left school, so I really had nothing to aim for. Um, and again, my mum was always preoccupied, not in a bad way, but with my sister. When I was 10, I was going to secondary school, and my sister was born. So if I was at home, I was helping her with the baby. But if I was at school, on the rarity that I was at school, um, my attention would be, well, I've got to kind of get home and help my mum.
Yeah.
And I never really had a goal of what I was aiming for. So when I left school, never knew what job I wanted to do. Never really had I loved, but this ties back into sport. But I loved. Um, I've always loved soccer, football, as we like to call it here. Um,
Yeah.
and I played it like 3, 4 times a day, which people say, well, hang on, how do you play football if you've got dyspraxia? And I'm like, well, I can still play. It doesn't mean I've got to be the best. I was relatively, I had a group of friends that I played football with like 4 or 5 times a day, and we'd arrange our own football matches with other teams and stuff. And I was now like, basically, if you compare the two sports of soccer and American football, I think I was more like a quarterback in that position. And because I nailed on that position, I would know what my roles were. Although I wasn't the best gifted with the ball, like passing it and heading it, I would know the basics, and I could put in a good sliding tackle. Although I've probably broke a couple of ankles, but that's another story. But when you do something enough times, you kind of get the gist of it. It's not like I'm going to be crapping it the rest of my life, but you kind of get by. I felt like with soccer, I got by, but as I got older, I think I played football too much that it injured my knee, and it's sort of made me unable to do sport now. But I feel like that was my passion. But I didn't really want to grow up, leave school, and play football for a career.
Yeah.
I loved watching football. I loved talking about football and soccer. But my hobby was being a coach, being a manager. I wanted to be a
Right.
manager. But unfortunately, if you don't have a football career as a player, you don't necessarily get the career as a manager. It's a bit like you don't walk into a retail supermarket and straight away become the manager. You've got to work on the till first.
Yeah, you got to work up to that position.
Yeah. So I couldn't go, well, I can't play football to save my life, and I've got a bad knee, but do you mind if I take the manager's job? I want to coach this team of layabouts. I couldn't
That's
do that. It's
that's
like,
kind of what happened with my grandfather. He was very interested in sports, but he had an injury in his
yeah,
youth, and he took up doing like coaching stuff and being like a manager, like he managed the equipment and all that stuff. And it was distressing for him that he didn't get to play, but he was still involved.
well, that's it. But if you're like in the door already playing and then you get the injury, then you're kind of like, well, it's unfortunate, but he kind of was involved in the sport already in a capacity. So you kind of get like, well, the only option for you then as a retired sports player is to then do coaching. But as a dyspraxic, I felt like that the option, like me to play at a higher level than just kicking around the ball with my mates is a different kettle of fish.
Oh yeah.
So I wasn't like in a team with your mate. If that makes sense.
Well, it's
But
like it's like being a child and just playing make believe, and then wanting to be like a professional actor. That's kind of
yeah, basically. you can't tread the balls until you've basically put the curtains up. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like it's a hard one, and I feel like even when like sports day, we have like a sports day and stuff where every year all the years get together and they, every like class or form, I think we call it over there, would compete against each other, and then you'd have like team for hockey, team for netball, football, like soccer, rugby, which is like American football over here. You'd have badminton and things like trampolining and just like general sports. Well, I felt like although I wasn't the best soccer player, I felt like I was the best person or player in my position. There was no one else as passionate as me in my position, and I nailed on I knew what my role was, and I did it to the best of my dyspraxic ability. And then I'd always get overlooked for some useless like layabout that would like be friends with the other players.
Mm-hmm.
So it was always like who's friends with the coach. It wasn't who's got the best mindset or best ability or passionate or nothing like that. It was just basically who was friends with who. So I got chucked onto the hockey team. Now I don't mind hockey, but it wasn't hockey on a AstroTurf like a 3G pitch. It was more like long grown natural turf. So trying to pass the ball around on a pitch that doesn't allow for you to even pick up dog mess, it was ridiculous. But for some reason, my form I was captain of the hockey team 3 years running on this sports form day. We won like the tournament 3 years in a row, but I still got made to feel like I was insignificant because I wasn't in the football team. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't care less. I'm not going to do this. Evidently, I'm not going to play sports for the rest of my life. And I just thought to myself, like I said, I wasn't, if I wasn't if I was chucked out of the classroom, I felt like I was being chucked out of my sports team. I felt like I'd just throw in a towel if you get the sports pun. And again, it just sort of made me a bit like more reluctant to push myself. And yeah, sort of. Although I played football long after I left school for a few more years with my friends, it's sort of money became a problem. And as you get older, you sort of get to work and you sort of lose your passion for things. And yeah, I don't really play football anymore. I've not played football for a few years, and yeah, I've not really found my passion. I'm in a job that I don't like. I did like it to begin with, but it's not what I want to do. I feel like I'm typecasted to get the acting pun, because now my CV registers as retailer, not astro scientist or firefighter. I feel like I'm very much. But if I go to apply for a job that seems like cleaning or painting and decorating now, people go, "But you work in retail. Why would you leave retail?" So you kind of get caught. I've kind of been caught I'm in I'm in a difficult position where I don't know what to do. I haven't got the mindset of wanting to do something different, and I feel like my dyspraxia is holding me back in terms of lack of ambition. I don't really know what. If I did have something in mind, I probably still wouldn't follow my dream.
Right.
So it's like I feel like I'm sort of held back personally and dyspraxically.
Yeah, for me, it's because for most people, it's about trying different things before you figure out what your niche is, And whenever you know what you want to be, what you want to do from an early age, like I did, even though I'm not anywhere close to achieving those dreams, there's still where my passions lie. So growing up, it was hard for me to try different things because I was so bad at most things that I tried. It was hard for me to feel comfortable trying anything new. But part of it too was having that mindset of, well, this doesn't really relate to my ultimate ambitions. So I don't know if I want to, but I do wonder sometimes because I have like no interest in sports. Um, so I wonder if I was ever good at it or if I could play it adequately. Um, if I would have developed some kind of interest in it. Because sometimes you do try things and then you realize, oh, you know what, this is actually kind of fun. And I actually kind of enjoy this. But I never had that with sports just because I was so bad at it and noticeably inefficient doing it. It was hard for me to gain an interest in it and to have fun with it. And if I had normal capabilities, I guess, when it comes to things like that, then maybe I would have had an interest in it in some way.
Well, I don't necessarily believe, personally speaking, that dyspraxia would stop you from having a sporting interest in, like, being a fan of sport, or supporting a team, etc. Because I feel like a lot of people that watch sport don't necessarily, aren't the most proactive for people, regardless if they're dyspraxic or not. I wouldn't say if you go to I don't know, like a baseball game, the chances are of seeing, a stadium full of skinny, macho, I don't know, bodybuilders isn't the case. A lot of these people would never kick the ball in their life, or hit a baseball, thrown a ball, or hit a baseball. I don't think a lot of these people, fans or fans of sport, are, they're not all Wimbledon.
Yeah, they don't necessarily play it themselves. It's like people being, it's like enjoying, watching plays and not wanting to be an actor.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm applying that to things I am used to. Because I guess theater, in a sense, is almost like a sport. It can be, I mean, it could be, it's arguably, it's debatable whether or not it could be a sport in its own right. Just because
Well,
it
it's
does require some of the same kind of techniques and things and rules.
it's one of those things you've got to see live as well. You can't watch it later on. You've got to be there to see it. Really, you don't really get the same experience if you don't see it live, in the flesh. And I feel like, yeah, you're right. It's like, if you go to watch a theatre show, you don't necessarily ever want it to have been on the stage yourself, but you're there because you can appreciate the art.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and it's like I have been to football games and basketball games and stuff like that,
Yeah,
and it can be fun. Not like I've been to football games like for school and stuff, and I didn't necessarily have an interest in the game, but the atmosphere and the environment can be interesting, you know. Especially I always like going to like the concession stands and stuff, and I would always hang out with friends. It was always a
as a
great
kid.
place to be around your friends, and plus I knew a lot of people in the band. All my siblings were in band, so I was good friends with a lot of people in band. So yeah, I would go up to them. I wasn't in band myself, but I would often sit with the band people and just kind of like stand with them when they would cheer or something, you know,
Yeah,
in the little section, even though I wasn't supposed to be there. And
I
then
think
the band director would notice me and they would, hey, get out. You can't stand with, you're not
yeah.
in band. And it's like, oh, okay.
On the flip side, I feel like dyspraxia, in terms of going to like these large gatherings, sport, theatre, etc. Like, I've been to soccer games where there's been like 100,000 spectators, and it's like you leave. I'm sure you know of Wembley Stadium,
Oh,
where
yeah.
live,
Wembley
live
Stadium. Oh, yeah.
where Live Aid was,
A lot
and
of
things.
concerts and, yeah, the
Yeah,
Beatles played there.
basically,
Their most famous
yeah,
concert.
yeah, definitely. And it's all right getting into the stadium, but when you leave, everyone leaves at the same time, and it's like 100,000 people.
Huh.
Now, think
I
about
would leave
100,000.
early. I would leave early.
Well, yeah, that's it. But you paid to get in. You might as well watch the whole thing. But it's
Right.
like, if you leave, when you do leave, you're gonna, well, leave 5 minutes early. Other people are gonna catch up with you eventually, because you're dyspraxic. You're taking your time to get the lift, or you're trying to follow the signs. You're panicking. You don't want to get lost. So you take the time to walk slowly, and you don't want to trip over. So you could leave
Might
10
have to
minutes
fall down
early.
the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. So you could leave 10 minutes early and then still get caught up by everyone else. But 100,000 people is like the size of entire towns. And you think to yourself, like, you end up in the middle of 100,000 people, you're gonna have a panic attack. It's like, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
So being dyspraxic is like going to a concert, like 30,000 people, 50,000 people, 100,000 people. You're going to have a panic attack. You're not going to enjoy it. So what's the other option? You stay at home. It's like, so you're held back regardless of if you have fun or not. It's like you're going to have a dyspraxic moment, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so let's get into the topic of this podcast, dyspraxia and mental health. Um, can you explain a little bit more of how your mental health was affected by your dyspraxia and how it played into that? And I'm assuming, well, let's get straight away. What kind of mental health issues you have, first of all, just in general terms?
So yeah, so I started secondary school at age 11, and it became apparent that my friends were all spread out across the school. I had to start making new friends, which I couldn't really do, and I felt isolated and alone. And obviously, I was having a bit of trouble at home. I was having to help out my sister, and I just became lost in my own room, really, and never socialised at that point. And as I left school about 7 years down the line, left college, it became known to me by a doctor that I was supposedly depressed, and then they prescribed me antidepressants. Well, flip forward a few years to now, and I've been diagnosed with ADHD, and what I've also got is emotionally unstable personality disorder, which is technically classed as borderline personality disorder. It's the same name but different term, basically.
Right.
And it's brought to my attention that I might not have ever been depressed. I've just got a personality disorder that's been brought on by my ADHD, where I've got a low mood 1 minute and a high mood the next. Because obviously it was never stable at home. So 1 minute I could have, a nice family unit, and the next minute it'll be quite disorientated. So I'd be high 1 minute and then low the next. And I feel like that was brought on because of my circumstances at home and growing up. And yeah, getting the diagnosis of unstable personality disorder, emotionally unstable personality disorder, made me feel like that my depression was never there. It's just I've got ADHD and I'm high and low 1 minute to the next. And yeah, I've been told that counselling would never have worked for me, even though I've tried it a few times, because they didn't know that I had ADHD and kind of needed kind of therapy for that.
Yeah.
Because the therapists kind of work off a different page when it comes to ADHD.
Well, even with dyspraxia,
Exactly, yeah. If they don't know you're dyspraxic, and when I first started getting therapy, when I first got antidepressants 10 years ago, I didn't really know about dyspraxia that well, so I couldn't really explain it. So they would never have been able to help me that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it would have been a situation where I was always on a path to losing, and I feel like it would have been a waste of time. So what I do know is having the personality disorder, I'm on antipsychotic medication, which has leveled me out, and I'm waiting for medication for my ADHD to settle my mood, to balance my mood out rather, and feel a lot more content now. I had a period of I would say last year, 2019, where I felt suicidal. I lost my appetite. I went on like a hunger strike. It wasn't like I imposed it. It kind of just like happened. Um, and I was sort of like seen to by supposedly by mental health people, but they didn't really have any interest in helping me. I just felt like I was there to make them pass the time. Yeah, I think it's all right. I think that's basically it, really. Like in terms of mental health, like I thought I was depressed, but I wasn't. I've just got a disorder that needs help with.
Hello?
And I feel like if I came off the medication now, it wouldn't help me. It would be there or thereabouts
Right. Yeah, it seems, from my understanding, that a big part of borderline personality disorder or unstable personality disorder, if they're the same thing, a big part of it is interpersonal relationships.
Exactly. When you're not seeing when people come in and out of your life, you kind of become accustomed to that, and kind of don't know how to trust people, or promises get made to you and you know they're going to get broken. So you kind of become accustomed to um, accepting the worst, and then you kind of like anticipate the worst, and then when it doesn't necessarily pan out that way, you kind of carry out that thing that where you, even though if it's good news, you kind of make out it's bad news, so that you kind of follow through on your expectation. You don't feel like it's a waste of time. And when people are coming and going from your life, you kind of take it personally and make out you kind of feel like it's your own fault.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of you kind of become two personalities. One that's where happy not to see anybody, and the other one is where you want to see someone.
Yeah, become attached to people, and you value them and devalue them
Yeah,
rapidly.
basically. Yeah, it's like splitting from someone, but you actually like them still, um, and it's like an attachment, a resentment, and you just end up in the end of it resenting yourself. And it's like, I've just come to the conclusion that it is what it is, and I've just got to get help, and hopefully these things will level out by themselves with
And would
help.
you say that the help is available generally, or do you feel like there's how do I word it? Just a good sense of accessibility to mental health services where you are?
Um, right, so this is my own personal feeling, and so I feel like I've overly sort of not bad mouthed thing, but what I've done is I've not given a pleasant experience of school, teachers, or I've not given the best thing about doctors yet, or whatever. But I feel like the truth is this is I could have been, for 10 years, my doctors have basically shut me up by giving me antidepressants without looking into the facts. They've not picked up an ADHD until I and my partner looked into it. Actually, it was my sister-in-law who has a brother and a father with ADHD, and she said, "I think you should get Billy looked at for ADHD because it's apparent that the antidepressants, even though he's took several different antidepressants over the years, none of them are working. Now, if you're depressed, surely one of those tablets would help you out, not cure your depression, but give you some form of normality in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, None of them would work for me. So, having been told that someone thinks I've got ADHD, I told my doctor this, and he said basically it's almost like you've gone 10 years without being spotted for ADHD, and it's like someone should have picked up on the signs. And the therapists that I saw, even though they don't deal with ADHD, they would have gone, "Well, we can't help you. There's something underlying here wrong." They would have known they couldn't help me. It feels like they didn't. And again, it's back to what you said about, back to maths when you was at school, when you just got passed rather than getting the real issue never got looked at. It was more like, we want to pass you on. We don't want to holding you back. It's not good for us because then we've got to look into your real problem. It's like they kind of wanted to push you out the door faster.
Mm-hmm.
It's not beneficial for them to kick you back a year because they'd have to look into your stuff more. But it was more better for them to get rid of you than it was to keep you.
Yes.
And I feel like therapists could have would have known my ADHD was there and known that I wasn't depressed, but I had more severe issues like the borderline personality disorder and the ADHD. They would have known the signs were there, but it's felt like they couldn't even be bothered, or they just didn't like have the time to like push for that diagnosis or that synopsis to be put in place. Um, so I feel like I've been kind of let down by the system, but I don't want to slag the system off at the same time. I'm fairly reluctant to like sit here and say, yeah, they're awful and that. But
You
I
just
did
think
ask,
there could be an improvement.
absolutely. I would say I would call for much, much more funding for mental health
Yes.
uh, I would say that, like I said about, you know, helping people with hidden disabilities, if you empowered people with hidden disabilities, gave them the right help to begin with, and put more money towards it, I guarantee you not that these people would contribute more to society, to the economy, because they would have been in a better situation to do that. If you enable people to sit at home, clutching straws, and not having not having a good education or the empowerment to push themselves, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to
Yeah.
be able to support themselves. And
They're
it's
not
like
going to
that
be
with
able to
mental
be independent if you just kind of put them off to the side rather
health.
than try to, if you spent more time and more money to helping them and providing assistance and accommodations for them at an early age and have that early intervention, then in the long run, in the big picture of our society, we would have more people that can contribute to our economy and to our sustainability.
Exactly. It's like you might as well just send us to prison because you're not enabling us to do anything that to our best of our ability. You know, if we're sat at home because you're not helping us you're not helping us to help you, as I say, then there's no point into the system at all. It's like that with mental health. If you're not going to put put the funding in place to curb the issues with mental health, you're just going to end up with loads of people with mental health issues. It's like we can sort of talk about mental health until the cows come home, but then you end up with a house full of cows, and what do you do with the cows? It's like they're just sitting there. Do you know what I mean? It's like you've got to do something proactive in order for that proactiveness to carry forward. So it's like I was in it's a weird one. So I was, somebody gave me their bus ticket a few years ago. I couldn't find my change and I was needed to get home. And they went, "Here, you can have this ticket, mate." And I went, "What can I do for you?" And they went, "Pass it on when you get off the bus." And I thought that's quite a good way of looking at things. If you pass that down the chain, if you empower someone's mental health to be
Pay
better,
it forward.
that person will pay it forward. They'll go, "Well, I can spot the signs of that person needing mental health. I'll call the helpline, get them the help. I know what's wrong. I can't diagnose their problem, but I can put them in the right path or give them the phone number to empower themselves." If you go, right, I know that person's got dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, autism, Asperger's. I can spot the signs. I can't fix it for them, but I can empower them to go, "I need help. Can you do this for me so I can do that for myself?"
Well, part of it is changing the conventions of it and changing your view of neurodiversity rather than looking at it as something that's strange or something that's off-putting. Uh, Look at it as just being different and, like you said, empower them and don't make them feel inadequate because they're neurodivergent. Um, because there's typically whatever disorder you have, whether you're on the autism spectrum or you are dyspraxic, there are things that you have capabilities for. Like for instance, people who are on the autism spectrum who aren't dyspraxic, like they tend to be really organized. They tend to be really knowledgeable about certain things. They tend to be very punctual. Um, and that's very beneficial. But you look at them as just some kind of weirdo and you treat them as such, it's gonna play on their self-esteem and
Yeah, and that's where
build
mental health.
that rather than diminish it.
That's where the mental health problem comes into play, because that by doing by holding people back with regard to learning difficulties and neurodivergency, it's like you're then making that person's mindset, their brain, become a prison, and they become a prisoner to themselves. Um, and you then don't let their brain function to the way it should do. And like I said, you might as well put us in prison if no one can sort of push us along. We're not asking to be dragged along. We're just asking to be both mentally and physically assisted some parts of our lives. Um, you know,
Yeah, you
I
just
feel
need
like
some accommodations. Everybody needs some kind of accommodation for something in some capacity.
exactly um, that's the way to look at it. I feel um, it's a real crisis with mental health at the moment. I don't think the current pandemic's helping. Obviously, that's not
No.
going to do well any good in terms of mental health, especially in the UK. I felt like it was uh, abysmal, the quality of mental health support beforehand. It's going to be absolutely worse afterwards. We're
It's
going to be,
interesting because we're speaking on the same topic, but we're speaking from two different perspectives because obviously, and I'm not an expert at mental health in America, but that's that's the system that as I understand it. And you have the services that are over there, so it's it's different.
yeah, that's the problem. It's like um, we all aspire to having the best health service in the world, providers in the world, and be the best at mental health, best disabilities, but no one's really got the understanding of what's best for people. It's more like we're making it up as we go along. We hope that this mental health provision works. Uh, Basically, the answer at the moment is supply people with tablets and hope for the best.
Yeah.
That can't be good for anybody.
No, and there's so many, I mean, there's so many problems with the pharmaceutical industry, and so much of it is based in greed that it's not about helping people, it's about making an extra buck.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but there's sort of a thing in here, conception here that a lot of the doctors in this country kind of are obligated to hand out these tablets because there's pharmaceutical companies that benefit from getting these tablets issued to patients, and it, it kind of I think there's a feeling there's a worrying sentiment here that these antidepressants are being given out um, as a means to fund or or keep the doctors in employment in terms of if we give you these tablets they might not help you but it will keep us afloat in terms of the fact that these big companies might fund the health service in a way that they do now.
Hmm. Yeah, and
uh,
there becomes less of an incentive to really help the problem and just kind of stave off the symptoms a little bit, but keep you having to get more and get more and more refills so that they make more money. But
it's
that's kind of how it is because I don't know because the financial aspect of it all is different with our countries because in America, we still have to pay for everything as far as medical treatment is concerned, and you pretty much, I mean, you could die because you can't afford to get treatment for things. I mean, people can't even get treated for the coronavirus, uh, because they can't afford it, and or they'll go into debt. I think there was my brother was reading about a guy who had to go to the hospital for and get treatment for because he had COVID-19, and his bill came out to over $1 million.
so when that happens, say for instance you go to hospital with an accident, you broke your leg, and you don't have insurance, and they go, right, can you afford it to pay now, or have you got insurance? And you say no to both. Do they fix you in a way, help you in a way, or do they
Well, if it's an
take the whole?
emergency, then well, basically, it's almost like a restaurant or something where you pay at the end, but if you can't pay, well, then you owe that money. But if you can't afford to pay it, then you just basically go into debt. I mean, I've been in the hospital for things um, that I've had emergency. I mean, I tried to made a suicide attempt when I was 18, and I was slapped with fees for, an ambulance, for taking me to the mental hospital that I had to be in, which wasn't even necessary because it wasn't like I was dying or anything. They just transported me from a hospital to a mental hospital, one town over, and the ambulance, just the fee for the ambulance was over $800, and of course I owed money for being admitted to the mental hospital and admitted to the hospital. So I don't even know how much in debt I am as far as like medical. And the thing is, the only consequence is that it screws up your credit score. Um, but you're just in debt. But it's not like you don't go to prison over medical debt. But like if you have like a family, like you have a mortgage on a house or something, I mean, big expenses, like it screws up your finances, I guess. And people go bankrupt for it. But they still have to treat you if it's like an emergency. If it's like life or death
Yeah.
or something, then you know. But like say it's like you got injured somehow, they'll do what they need to make sure that you don't die or something. But if you have to have some kind of surgery, they'll be like, well, the surgery is going to cost this amount, but you also have to pay you know, the money that you owe that you couldn't pay for your hospital bills. It's a bad situation, and you can't really get a check. I mean, most insurance is through employers, and unless you have like a really good, high-paying job that has really good insurance, um, there's a lot of medical costs that insurance won't even cover. Most of them don't even cover like mental health. Um, like I had my health insurance through Walmart whenever I worked there,
Yeah.
and I had to pay. I saw a therapist for a few weeks, and then I realized that she was totally incompetent. Um, but I had to pay it all out of my own pocket. It was like $80 a session, weekly sessions. So I had to basically pay $80 a week for an hour just to talk to somebody who was just going to be judgmental anyway.
Yeah.
It's
The,
just it's a bad system in
the,
America.
the only thing I mean, I'm not here to solve problems, but like, in terms of what America does with their health system, but over here, it's not. We don't obviously pay for like our NHS other than our taxes and national insurance, which isn't that much in the scheme of things compared to what you go through. But it's like over here, if our students want to go to university, get a degree, they get in debt and then they pay it back throughout their working life. But you only pay back when you earn a certain threshold. So you don't pay back unless you earn more than, I don't know what it is, but unless you earn more than like £25,000 a year, you don't pay anything back. Um, and then when you do earn more than that, you get it put on your your tax and national insurance. So you don't pay it yourself; it automatically comes out of your income. Your employer then has to deduct it from their reductions when they issue the payslip. Um, that would be my preference in America. You don't pay anything back until you're earning more money. So basically, again, you empower someone by helping them get better, like, i.e., mental health, and then when they're on their feet, they're going to hopefully get better mentally to work harder, work better, and earn more, and then they'll pay more back into the system. So again, it's all about empowering people. And then if that person's earning more than say $25,000 a year, they can easily afford to pay back the debt they got by asking to see a mental health expert or counselling therapists, etc.
Well, I don't really know about the tuition uh, stuff because I never went to college. But I know that my brother is in debt for he's in college debt. He couldn't finish college because of his college debt because he couldn't pay back any of his loans. And I guess for some reason they didn't ask for the money, but they didn't wait until he graduated to get that money back. I really don't. It's been so long since I've even attempted stuff like college, so I don't even know how it works. Some people say that they take out student loans and they end up having to pay it, like you said, pay it back over time. Um, but since I never attempted going to college, I don't have student loans to pay back, so I don't really think about it or look into it. Um, as far as the medical stuff, I don't, nothing gets deducted from like paychecks or anything because of the medical stuff that I owe. But I get like notices in the mail that says you owe this amount of money. I think maybe they add on to it because of like interest or something. I don't know. I don't even look at them anymore. I just kind of throw them away because I
Yeah,
can't pay it. I can't pay these hospital bills. And almost kind of on principle, I don't think it's right to pay it, especially things that I didn't even like the ambulance fee. There was no reason why I should have to pay that ambulance fee because they forced me into an ambulance that I didn't need for
yeah,
about a 20-minute drive. It was like a super expensive taxi.
yeah,
That's kind of what it was. There was no, I even told them at the time, I said, can't my mom just take me to this hospital? If I have to go to this hospital, which I didn't ask to go, I didn't
yeah.
enter it voluntarily. It's just that's basically your punishment for trying to kill yourself.
It's like saying, Brandon, I hate to break it to you, but you do know there's things such as Uber now, don't you? It's like I bet you'd have better things to spend $800 on, wouldn't
Yeah, I don't even know if Uber was a thing at the time, but I could have been like, I didn't even know that I was gonna have to pay a big bill, to ride in that ambulance, which shows how little I knew at 18. But um, $800 was unbelievable when I found that out, and they were like, okay, so how are you gonna pay it? I'm like, I can't afford it, and I had just gotten fired from my job. Not that I got paid enough to where I could set aside $800. I've never had $800. Wait, no, I have. No, that's ridiculous for me to say. But I've never had $800 that I could just spend, to just in one thing.
you? Yeah,
If I had $800, I need that $800 to get me through, survival.
yeah,
And I don't see any, even if I made a bunch of money to where I could afford to pay off like the ambulance fee and stuff, I don't even know if I don't know if I would because it just isn't right. But I don't know, maybe I'd have to. If I had to, then I guess I would, but it's still ridiculous to me.
here's the mindset I've got. Right, if I was in your predicament where people are perhaps ushering you to pay them back for that money, for that experience where your mental health was at a state where you felt like doing such harm to yourself. It's like if they came calling to me again about the money, I'd be like, well, I'm not depressed at the moment. If they came ushering me for money that I didn't really want to pay out for in the first place, I'd be like, well, the only option there is I haven't got the money, so I'd rather be dead than pay that money back. So it's like
Yeah,
they
you're
kind of,
giving me more of a reason.
yeah, if you're dead, you're not going to pay that money back. So kind of like they're kind of not enabling you to pay that money back in a way. Surely it's better for you to stay alive to repay that money back over time than it is for them to hound you down and go, pay me back, pay me back. Like it doesn't. That's nonsensical. I think as a dyspraxic, we see things outside the box, and the logic of most neurotypical people is, in my opinion, shoddy. Like I just think the way they look at things. Right?
I agree with you. It's strange because our world is so disorganized and so chaotic, and yet our common sense seems to be better than a lot of people's, and our rationality seems to, I mean, there's things I see people do at work where I'm just like, what's the reason for that? Like when I look at people, the way people carry themselves and the way that people look at things, I'm just like, no, no, that doesn't make sense. Like there's no reason that you should be like that or that you should handle the situation in that way. It's like on some level, we're like not as capable as some people are, and on another level, we're like so much smarter, And I've noticed that with a lot of people in our dyspraxic group. or just Dyspraxics in general, is that we're very understanding of a lot of things. We're very knowledge. There's just things that just click in our brains that we just get.
Yeah.
I find that with a lot of Dyspraxics. It's like I don't think I've met a Dyspraxic that's like, oh, this person is just an idiot. Like every Dyspraxic I met is a very intelligent person. They're very, some of them are maybe more sophisticated than others, or logical thinking than others.
Yeah.
Some are more, uh, down to earth, I guess, simple, homely kind of people. Um, because it is a diverse group of people who have it. I mean, we just have the thing in common. We all have different personalities apart from that. But that's sort of a common theme, I feel like, is that we're very logical, and our common sense just seems to be better than a lot of neurotypical.
Absolutely. I feel like of all the people I work with, they're mostly neurotypical, and they do things that obviously they would think is normal, but I would find obscenely strange. And it's almost like they think they're doing things A to B, but they don't realise that they can't think outside the box. They're very much stuck on the page of the rule book. They can't get off that page.
They
Um,
can't step back and look at the big picture of things.
no, they can't bring to life things like we can. Like we can solve problems very easily. Like there's a fact that in this country, in the UK, there's a lot of jobs going for secret agent, like secret service work, as in MI6 um, territory. Like we're talking like James Bond territory, where they know that we think outside the box. We can problem solve very well. I myself can solve most difficult things. I can't attempt to do it myself, but I could give someone the reason of how to fix it. I can go, well, you know, my father-in-law once tried to put some latches on a door frame that he's like, well, I can't do this job because I haven't got the space. And I was like, well, you could put it in between the doors or like in between the frames. And he was like, I didn't think of that. I was like, well, I wouldn't know how to physically do that myself, but I could tell him how to do it.
See,
I could
my
sit, I could sit
my
here and tell people what to do, but I couldn't do it myself.
Yeah. See, I'm not so much good at the problem solving stuff, but I think I look at things on a deeper level than a lot of people do. Like I'm able to look at certain things with multiple different sides. Like I can kind of look at things from every angle. And so, a lot of some, like for instance with societal issues, there's certain societal issues. I'm not even going to go into it because it could be controversial. But and the reason it would be controversial is that I can kind of see every side to it on certain things. So it's um, like I'll talk about like politics like for instance, like when it comes to like the election and things like that. When I look at the political spectrum in America, like there's the left and then there's the right. I'm in the middle, and I'm looking at both sides, and I'm just like, you both are crazy. You both are being ridiculous. You know?
Well, that's funny you say that. I mean, I'm like, at the moment, I haven't really got any political like like stronghold on any sort of side of the spectrum. So I don't go, yeah, I think the left's rubbish or the right's rubbish. I don't feel like I'm in the middle either. I just feel like I'm sort of like fed up with the whole thing, and I'm like, I just feel like I could problem solve for them, but I wouldn't support them.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I mean there's I don't know. I guess I'm more on the left side, but I'm not definitely not a liberal, and I have a lot of issues with how the liberals. It's like they have like I guess the right intentions, I guess,
yeah,
in my view, but it's their motives that that is the problem, and it's like their heart's in the right place, but they're kind of the way that they go about it. It's more selfish, and I don't have the words to properly explain what I'm talking about, but I think you kind of get the idea.
yeah, I do, and it's like we could sit here and give like political parties a noose on what to like say and do from an outside perspective because we think outside the box. we could give fresh impetus onto things, and we could rally people into doing things differently, and that's what's needed. I think a lot of the time people just stick to what they know, and it's like we regurgitating like the same rubbish over and over and over. It's like, you know, you might as well have the same script like for
Yeah.
play, you know, and never change it. You might as well just
But it might be
over.
clones of other people.
Yeah, and to engage, to evolve and change and, you know, prosper and get on and succeed. You know, Shakespeare cannot be Shakespeare year in, year out. It needs to have different directives. It needs to be fresh. It needs to be modern. It needs to have a bit of liberal perspective in it, but it can't derive from the, you know, the right side of, you know, the righteousness of it, or, you know,
Yeah.
it can't take away from the left hand side of it. You can't steer it to the central, but you need to give it direction at the same time.
Yeah, you can't base it on being as divisive as possible. It's like they want to be, you're taking it to two different extremes,
Yeah,
and you got to find a common ground. And if your goal is to find the system that's best for everybody, then you're gonna find ways in which you relate to other people, even if they're on the other side. Like if you're a liberal, you're gonna have things ultimately on a human level that you agree with you know, with the conservatives or with the right. You
well,
know,
that's
we're
well, that's
ultimately similar beings. We want the best for ourselves and our society.
exactly. And I feel like, you know, I feel like personally over here, we could do away with Parliament. I feel like we could start afresh. You don't need two or three or four parties shouting at each other. I feel like it should be, from a dyspraxic point of view, it should be the best people, right? Um, you know, advocating for change and improvement for everybody. It should be the best people in the right in best people for the job, basically. Um, you know, the most passionate politicians, rather than the, you know, just a few good ones, a few bad ones fighting between themselves. I feel like you should have the best representation for yourself, rather than just four or five different parties full of like half good eggs, some bad eggs. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, and it's like almost making it like it's a sports team or something, and you're just cheering for your team and trying to
yeah,
sabotage the other. And that's not how it should be. We should try to come together and not base. That's the problem I have with this election is so many people I know and that I see talking about politics and this and that. It's always about I hate the other side and I'm gonna attack the other side. Uh, and that's how you get, you know, the way our election is. Like, you know, in the case of America, like the both people and both candidates running for president, neither one of them are right for this country. Neither one of them is qualified. You know, one should be in prison, one should be in a nursing home. You know, and there's just it. It should be about what's best for everybody. It should be about um, what's in everybody's best interest.
it takes us back to, you know, school basically, and like, you know, so there's faults with these people. We're just going to accept it. We're just going to pass it off, and, you know, hope for the best. You know, why not address the situation and say, look, you know, if it was like us in the role of being politicians, yeah, we're dyspraxic, but, you know, let's not just sit on that. Let's do something about it. Let's work with that. Work with what you got. You know, you got Trump and Biden fighting for the hot seat, thinking, well, you know, they both got their flaws. Let's face it, but let's look at the good side, or let's help. You know, what can we change about the flaws? What can we improve on, rather than attacking the negatives all the time?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel
And
like the mindset of, sorry, Brandon, the mindset of society is to, rather than improve on things, it's always to attack the negatives. No
yeah,
one ever seems to want to work on things that are unsatisfactory, or that could be I mean, people say Trump's got dyspraxia, but everyone's always criticising him for his awkwardness, but no one's ever going, hang on, is there a reason for that? You know, maybe he's fighting back because he's fed up with being attacked all the time. You never know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like it's war rather than being, it's like we want peace and people are treating it like it's a war and we're trying to destroy the other side. And I'm just so sick of the divisiveness and it's prevalent everywhere. It's like what you're talking about over there and over here. It's like the left versus the right. And I'm just sick of that. Can't we all just find, I mean, obviously a lot of people on the right are going to disagree with a lot of my views on a number of different issues. Um, so yeah, I don't think that there's things that we can come together on, but I don't know, I think it should just be about what's best for the people and trying to figure that out. But people are so wrapped up in their own nonsense that they can't think outside themselves and they can't understand for whatever reason that there are ways that we could help our society and make things better. And the start for that is accessibility and freedom. And, having the accessibility and the availability for things like getting an education and getting medical treatment and treatment for mental health. I mean, there's so many people in the world who are held back by their mental health issues because they can't get that stuff sorted. Like for me, for instance, my mental health struggles have been the number one deterrent for everything in my life. Not even just the dyspraxia. That's a big, issue and roadblock for me, which is why I'm doing stuff like this and, doing the podcast and writing my blog and my book and everything. But it's also the fact that it's contributed to my mental health and it's only gotten worse because I can't do anything about it. I can't get the proper help for it. That was the end of the second part to my interview with Billy Stanley of Dyspraxia Help for You. In the last segment, we will be diving further into the issue of mental health in our society and also talk a little bit about our goals with our respective podcasts. Can't wait. Stay tuned, Theatrics.